Hey, what's going on, everyone? Dave going to watch. I've got guys an update on Major Hurricane Milton. All right, so Milton right now is a Category 5 hurricane. It did something that was absolutely incredible. It went through a eye replacement cycle, which mostly strong hurricanes do, but it re-strengthened to a Category 5 hurricane again. All right, so now is once again a Category 5 hurricane, well over the threshold for a Category 5 hurricane now with sustained winds at around 165 miles per hour. Yet there has been some recent recon data that has actually supported that this storm is a little bit stronger at this point. All right, so starting out here, take a look at satellite. You can see that it is currently getting pretty close to Florida. All right, Florida is on the top right hand side of your screen, right in the pink here. That's where Florida is, and this is where Milton is located. All right, Milton is charging its way toward Florida, still as a dangerous Category 5 hurricane. Now, you're probably wondering, how is it not going to make landfall as a Cat 5 in Florida if it's still a Cat 5 and it's already, getting this close? Well, it's a great question. It's mainly because that, it's going to interact with some wind shear, and it's also going to be entering just a much less favorable environment. Also with the sea surface temperatures. Now, they are also very, very warm out here, but they're actually not as hot as the sea surface temperatures that it's moving over currently. So there's a lot of factors that come into play to weaken out the system. But yes, this is not expected to make landfall as a Category 5 hurricane, thankfully. But still a very dangerous major hurricane expected to make landfall there. So as you can see, just on the satellite here, you can see you got rich, deep convection going on right around that core. That eye is very pronounced. That's our new eye. It was a little bit bigger this morning, but it's really starting to get its act together. I mean, it's been an incredible storm. You can't even say it's gotten its act together because it's done that for the past 48 hours plus. But you can see well-defined outer bands here, just a massive system, really intense hurricane there. I've seen incredible photos from space. This thing just looks like a beast, and that's pretty much what it is. But you could look at, the water vapor, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So this is the hurricane right here. You can see that in these greens and blues, right? This is where you've got your moist air. Look how big of a moisture pool that you've got with this system. It's almost like it's branching out a ton of moisture up into Florida. All right, right now, if you're in Florida and you're watching this video, it's probably very humid outside. It could even start to be raining if you're in the Keys. Okay, that's because that the moisture pool with this system is so big. You're still getting moisture that's thrown out from this outer band all the way into the Yucatan while this storm is going up into Florida. You can see into Mexico. We're still seeing some of that lingering moisture. Now, what you've got behind it is you do have a really intense cold front. This is a big cold front pushing a lot of dry and cold air down into the Gulf of Mexico. Look at these grays here. This is maxing out the scale, so this is just the air outside in Louisiana and in the northern section of the Gulf of Mexico. It's completely dried out, so you've got 100% unsaturated dry air out here that's pushing Milton up to the northeast because it's trying to get itself wrapped around in the circulation of Milton. You can actually start to see that happening here, yet it's getting messed up and kind of it almost looks like it's getting mixed around. If you want to put it that way, just because it's getting kind of reflected from the circulation of Milton, if that makes sense. So basically, Milton right now is he's got like a shield, and it's just the really intense tight core and those outer bands, just this entire moisture core that moisture pool that's surrounding the system. That's all deflecting and blocking all this dry air, but as it starts to weaken out on its approach to Florida, that's going to also allow for the dry air to get eventually wrapped into the circulation of Milton, and that's also going to go along with just the land interaction as this makes landfall. So those are the key factors that are coming into play as this thing is going to get ready to weaken out. But as of right now, there's no signs of this weakening. I mean, it just looks like a beast. It's still a Category 5 hurricane, and that brings us to our next segment of the video. All right, this is my good friend Broderick Howard. All right, go subscribe to him. He has a great YouTube channel. I'll put his link in the comments and in the description. He also has a great X account, so please go follow him. He just posted this. We just got drop zone data just about 20 minutes before this video. Drop zone data reveals a sustained surface wind speed of 184 miles per hour. This hurricane is insane. Okay, so That is just absolutely incredible. But you can see right here, this is the surface wind speeds, 160 knots. That's about 185 miles per hour. But look at this. This is literally a perfect reading here. And this is just, I mean, you can see that's where it was placed, right outside of that, out of the eye there. So really just right around the eye wall. But this is really, really intense. You can see here, just above the surface, we're getting near 170 knots with those winds. So this is potentially one of its highest points. Because remember, last night it only got up to 180-mile-an-hour storm, and from this, if this reading is true, then we have a 185-mile-per-hour storm in system. So this is just incredible, guys. But you can see currently on the live tracker in the cone here, as of right now, it doesn't appear that they've updated this, but still, what we've got now is, according to the National Hurricane Center, this is still 165 mile per hour Category 5 hurricane. By 2 a.m. tonight, it's still 165 mile per hour hurricane, but after it gets through this point, after it gets through 2 a.m., it's going to start to go on its weakening trend. Now, that hasn't been the case at all because we've seen now a Category 5 hurricane, which was completely unexpected, but now we've seen it for a very, very long time now, probably approaching 18, maybe even closer up to 24 hours of this storm being a Category 5 hurricane. So that gives me the thought that I wouldn't be surprised if this was still a Category 5 hurricane past 2 a.m. tonight. And if that's the case, then that's going to be a huge problem. A lot is at stake, because we still haven't seen the beginning of when when it's going to start to weaken. Because back when it did down to Category 4 early this morning, everyone thought that was when it was starting to weaken out, and everyone got, a little bit happier and a little bit, calmer, as far as what, we were looking at for Florida impact. But that was just the storm, doing an eye replacement cycle, and that's what strong hurricanes do. And then boom, all of a sudden, by this evening, this was back up to a Category 5 hurricane. So that's what really amazed everybody's. But you can see, hopefully, by about 2 p.m. tomorrow Eastern, we should have this storm down to 150 miles per hour. Now, the fact that you're going to have potentially this go from 165 mile per hour Cat 5 down to 150 mile per hour Cat 4 in about 12 hours or so, that seems a little fishy to me. I still have faith in the system being Category 5 hurricane at this point, just because it keeps chugging. It just won't stop. That's, if you look at the post that I just showed, that's exactly the words that everyone is saying. It just won't stop. All right, it's never showing any signs of weakening. So I just think that just everything that we've seen so far has just given me the idea that this still has the potential to be a Category 5 a little bit longer than expected. But as of right now, we're hoping that this is going to be a Category 4 hurricane by 2 p.m. tomorrow, and then we get to landfall. All right, at landfall, we're still expecting a Category 3 hurricane with 125 mile per hour winds. So a high-end Category 3 hurricane at landfall here. All right, you have hurricane warnings in the red shade. I believe you have mandatory evacuations pretty much from Cape Coral all the way up to north of Spring Hill. I could be wrong, but Tampa's evacuated, Bradenton, Northport, Cape Coral, everybody out here is evacuated. I believe Lakeland is evacuated. This is a really bad situation, and this has the potential to be a Helene-like event at landfall. I'm going to call it right now. It's just possible with every single thing that this storm has done so far. It just really seems like that's going to be the case. But yeah, we're talking about some serious winds out here near Bradenton Beach, north of Northport. So really, landfall looks to be just south of Tampa, but Tampa Bay is going to fill up like a bowl. All right, you're going to get water that's going to get pushed right into Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay is going to get filled up, and we're going to see some big time storm surge in here. It's going to be the northwestern eye wall is going to be pushing a ton of water into Tampa. And that's why we're going to see really intense impacts. And if the eye does get big enough, which we're expecting the storm to double in size, so considering that the storm is going to double in size from now, means that we're probably going to see the eye and eye wall end up impacting Tampa. So that means that we're also going to see the highest of winds into Tampa, into St. Petersburg, and Clearwater. So those cities alone are going to generate hundreds of thousands of power outages. I think that there's a potential that the entire city of Tampa is going to be without power. It's just that this storm is literally dead on hitting one of the most popular and populated areas in Florida here. All right. But you can see that we also do have our tropical storm warnings up in the blue here, going all the way out for pretty much the entire Big Bend of Florida. That's a upgrade here. But now Apalachicola under the tropical storm warnings. Look how far away from the cone that is. This storm is going to get really big, once again, doubling in size. So that's why we have the tropical storm warnings out there. Same thing for Carabel, and pretty much all across the Big Bend here, Steinhatchee, Florida, and everyone that got impacted by Helene. Now, in the red, you got Cedar Key, Hermosa Springs, Spring Hill, and then eventually into the cone. That's where we have the hurricane warnings. Notice the west coast of Florida is also under hurricane warnings because even as this thing makes its way inland, this is still expected to be a Category 1 hurricane by 2 p.m. On Thursday, all right? So by the time this makes its way on the east coast of Florida, this is still going to be a hurricane. So that's why we have hurricane warnings going out for Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce, Vero Beach, Sebastian, Palm Bay, Satellite Beach, Merritt Island, you got New Smyrna Beach, Ponche Inlet, Daytona Beach. I mean, I can just name a ton of cities out here, but anybody in the red is currently under hurricane warnings. Jacksonville, surprisingly, I believe is under a hurricane warning. Atlantic Beach, Jacksonville Beach, so Ponte Verda. All of you guys are currently under hurricane warnings. Now you've got the tropical storm warnings going out for coastal Georgia and tropical storm watches up towards the South Carolina coastline. That is actually very far away from the cone. We can measure here. So this is when the tropical storm watches, I think I said warnings earlier, but this is where the tropical storm watches ends. Look how far away from the cone that is. That is almost 230 miles away from the cone. That is absolutely insane. And you compare that to how big the storm is now. It's a pretty big system. It's still gaining size, but this is expected to double in size by the time we get to landfall. So just that's how widespread the impacts are expected to be. So Gainesville, Orlando, everyone out here in Central Florida, you guys are currently under hurricane warnings. That's because the storm is just going to bring widespread impacts due to its massive size. Eventually, that's what we're going to see. So you look at the National Hurricane Center homepage as of right now. What they're saying is that Milton will bring life-threatening storm surge and winds to portions of the Florida Gulf Coast. As of right now, we have a minimum pressure at around 902 millibars. So this is almost for the second time a sub 900 millibar storm, which last night I believe it got down to 897 millibars, which I've seen that on some hurricane models that there was actually one hurricane model that overdid Helene by a landslide, and it actually showed something kind of similar to that. So that's kind of just what blew my mind, is that Milton just changed something that is like out of this world to reality. So that kind of just shows how historic Milton is. But right now it seems like it's probably going to fall in as the third or fourth strongest hurricane in Atlantic history. I believe that's right. I could be wrong, but it's something like that. But as of right now, 902 millibar minimum central pressure, and according to the National Hurricane Center, still 165 mile per hour sustained winds, but could be even higher than that. All right, you also do have Hurricane Leslie still hanging on to hurricane status. That's not going to be a threat to land, so we don't really need to worry about that at all. All right, so we look at the HRRR model really quick. We're going to go over the outlook for what's going to be happening in Florida at landfall. So here you go. You're starting to get the outer bands as we get later into tonight, and then we wake up tomorrow morning. This storm is on Florida's heels right now. All right, you're starting to see those outer bands, those tornado warnings probably starting to pop off here. These supercells embedded with those outer bands are really going to start to produce those spin-ups. And I do think that a lot of people are going to be waking up to the EAS alarm going off due to a tornado warning. Now, we're not talking about wedge tornadoes. We're talking about brief spin-ups. Now, there have been long-track tornadoes in the past associated with hurricanes. And I think there's a possibility for that because you're going to have an unusual amount of supercells. And it seems like within these outer bands, those supercells are going to be long-lasting. So that's why I do think we're not going to see only brief spin-ups, but I do think those tornadoes could last a little bit longer. Look at this. You're getting absolutely lashed with these outer bands. If you're in southern Florida, if you're in central Florida, this is going out for the same areas as where those hurricane warnings and even some of those evacuation areas are. this area, specifically, is going to get really, really hard, going to get hit really, really hard, by those tornadic supercells embedded with those outer bands. But here's that eye. That's a very well defined eye there. Almost zero DBZ values within that eye. You get, yep, there it is, zero DBZ values, and then boom, this is that eye wall. It appears that the northwestern side of the eye wall is going to be the strongest point. That's actually interesting because that's unusual for hurricanes. But that's what we see here, and this continues to move its way and work its way, closer and closer to Florida. I mean, you're just getting round after round after round of these outer bands here. It just won't stop. I mean, I really do think it's going to be hard for the National Weather Service to even keep up with just the amount of tornado warnings they need to issue, because I'm afraid we're going to see a really intense tornado outbreak potentially in this area. Now, tornado outbreak meaning we're going to see a lot of tornadoes, but a lot of brief spin up tornadoes rather than a lot of long track and damaging tornadoes. Now, yes, these tornadoes will be damaging, but they're not going to be like the tornado outbreak classics in the Great Plains. They're not going to be like that kind. So, if you know what I mean there. So, if you're in northern Florida here, but still into the peninsula, this is where you're going to start to see the heaviest amounts of rain. All right, you're going to get localized areas of flash flooding definitely within those outer bands, but this is when you start to get the nonstop, really intense outer core of the storm starting to move through. All right, this is going to last for hours. It is going to be absolutely torrential rain for hours. That's why travel is impossible. Travel is it's mandatory that you don't travel, if you stayed. But you're starting to see that inner core impact those areas towards Tampa and on the western coast, and then boom, you get landfall. All right, this storm gets absolutely shredded up by the land interaction, thankfully. But you still have these well-defined outer bands. This one outer band alone could produce tons of tornado warnings, tons of water spouts, tons of breeze spin-ups. You got this outer band here. And then you've got the outer core that is producing the most heaviest amounts of rain, absolutely torrential rain for hours out here. I mean, you can play through this whole animation and look. We can count how many hours you get. We'll start out right here. All right, this is hour 22, and then when does it stop? Everything stops at hour 46. That's over. That's like a 24-hour nonstop torrential rain span there. That is absolutely insane. Just because look how small this storm is approaching Florida. Look at that. That's a tiny hurricane. Look at it when it gets right up to Florida. Look how big this thing is. All right. But this eye goes right south of Tampa. I mean, the eye wall definitely hits Tampa there, but just absolutely insane there. And then even get a lot of heavy rain up into Georgia and into the Carolinas. So really intense impacts expected. And you look at the rainfall here. The rainfall has actually gone up as far as the totals. Now seeing another swath of 12 to 16 inches expected anywhere near Orlando. If you're northwest or north and east of Orlando, that's where we're expecting a foot or higher. The Tampa Bay, right around there, looks like about a foot of rain or so is expected to fall. But if you're in the red shade, that's 12 to 16 inches. Orange, you're in 8 to 12. And then if you're in the gold shade, 6 to 8. Yellow, 4 to 6. And then in the dark green, 2 to 4 inches. So you can actually see the path of Milton, even on the rainfall here. But this is the exact area shown by the HRRR with the heaviest amounts of rain. I would kind of see this shifted a little bit farther north. So I do think that if you're outside of this orange shade, I would count yourself in. If you're up here a little bit farther south than Jacksonville, a little bit farther north than Orlando, if you're right in this area, I do think you're going to see a little bit heavier rainfall. So we'll see, obviously, with the position of where this is going to make landfall. But I really do think that we're going to see some really high totals farther north. But as of right now, this pretty much looks set in stone. Just a really concerning forecast as far as the impacts with Milton go. But as of right now, you do have a high risk of flash flooding that does include Orlando and Tampa Bay. All right, this is at least a 70% chance of encountering flooded roads within 25 miles of a given location. This could extend north. I do think that it probably should. But as of right now, if you are north of Orlando or south of Jacksonville, right now in the red shade, you have a moderate risk. It's at least a 40% chance of encountering flooded roads. In the yellow, you have a slight risk that's 15% chance, and a 5% in the green shade. All right. You look at the storm surge forecast. This has increased in the past few hours. We're now up to a 10 to 15 foot forecast here. So that is pretty much, I would say that's taller than the first level of your house. So if you're in Tampa Bay and you're on the coastal regions, if you stayed, that's just, I don't want to sound brutal here, but that's just bad news. You really made a mistake if you're staying. But, obviously to try to keep you alive, if you're staying, let's say you're in Tampa Bay right now, you're literally on the coastal waters, or in the coastal communities of Tampa Bay. All right, expect the storm surge to be up to the first level of your home. It's probably going to be over your head if you're in Tampa Bay. You're going to want to stay on the highest level of your home. But it's so hard to survive in these conditions because you have to stay on the top level of your home, but your roof has a chance of getting ripped off because of how strong the winds are. And also, you have flying debris and trees that could come crashing through your windows, crashing through your home. And that's the hazardous part of staying on the top level of on the top level of your home during a hurricane. But that's why you were told to evacuate if you're in Tampa. But Tampa, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. Charlotte Harbor, 8 to 12 feet. Bonita Beach, 8 to 12 feet as well. You got 5 to 8 feet in the orange shade. Flamingo, 3 to 5 feet. Florida Keys, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge. Yankeetown, 2 to 4. Cheswitzka, maybe a little bit higher than 5 feet. Anclote River, 5 feet. And then for the Big Bend region of Florida, you have also 1 to 3 feet of storm surge expected, all right? So finally, for the last part of the update, I do want to mention the tornado threat with Milton. So you can actually see that on the HRRR, this is the OZ run of the HRRR, you can see that the significant tornado parameter really starts to ramp up and actually spikes here. It maxed out the scale at a 10.4 here. All right, this is just south of Tampa, so that is actually a signal that the southern outer band that we saw moving through southern Florida and the Keys, that's the signal for that outer band to produce the most amount of tornadoes. So, like I said, that outer band alone has a chance to produce, 20 tornado warnings or even higher. A lot of brief spin-ups expected, but pretty much this entire area south of Tampa. If you were to draw a line going from Tampa to the east coast of Florida, and you would, be located just south of that line, anywhere south of that line has the potential to be under multiple tornado warnings due to these outer bands here. And this just continues throughout portions of Florida. Miami, it's going to be a really big day for tornadoes. St. Augustine, Florida, a lot of these areas definitely have the potential to be under multiple tornado warnings, and a lot of brief spin-ups are possible, and it's just going to be very unfortunate if we do see a major city become hit by or get hit by a tornado. All right, so that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for coming to watch. I will see you guys in the next video. So, final update. This final update on Milton. If you are watching this from Florida and you're tuning in, please let me know how you're doing in the comments. I'd really like to know. All I'm trying to do here, guys, is just to keep you safe. All right. Obviously, I do get excited myself about hurricanes and stuff, but when it gets serious as this and people's lives are at stake, all right, I understand how much of a serious situation this is, and so that's why I'm trying my best to keep you guys posted 24/7 here on whatever happens weather-wise across the country. But just stay safe out there. All you've got to do is you got to keep calm, try to make the best decisions that you can. The worst thing you do is freak out and realize that your life is on the line. It's true, but what you've got to do is just got to stay calm, be confident in what you're doing, and just make good decisions, and just don't take any chances. But just finish your preparations if you're staying before the rain ends up coming. But turn around, don't drown, don't even travel out there in Florida. But I'm praying for you guys. And hopefully we can just make it through this one last landfall, and hopefully this is going to be the last landfall, or at least U.S. landfall, of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. So thank you for coming to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.